la 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 lie, lie, la la lie, 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 la la lie, 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 la la lie, la la lie, 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 la la lie, lie, la la lie, 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 la la lie, 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 la lie, 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 la la lie. Lie, la la lie, 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 la la lie, 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 la la lie, 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 lie. Shabbat shalom, everyone. As you have undoubtedly noticed, I am flying solo this evening. Cantor Richard and his partner Abby are both under the weather with a virus, which will not be named. They're actually much better, but he's still testing positive. So I said, oh, I think a night home would be good for you. So that's what they are up to, but thank God they're feeling better, and soon will be rejoining us. I was this past week in Philadelphia for the annual meeting of the Central Conference of American Rabbis, the Reformed rabbis in North America, and I haven't tested positive yet, although given the number of people that were there, and the lack of masks that were there, I could be next in line. So I've got something to pray for tonight. It is, I told the cantor it's actually not a bad thing every once in a while for me to do the music in the service, because it reminds people why we need a cantor. But it's also an opportunity for me to invite you all, even more than you might normally be willing to join in and sing together. I was just doing a quick scan. I saw all the lips moving. So we're, I think, going to be okay. We are going to, even though my outline says Shabbat candle lighting now, by virtue, I suppose, of daylight savings time, the sun is still high in the sky. So we are going to, as we do at this time of year, defer the lighting of candles to the end of services. And we're going to start instead with Shalom Aleichem, which you can find on page 142. Shalom Aleichem, Balechei Hasharet, Balechei Elyon, Mi Melech, Balechei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bolechem L'Shalom, Balechei Hashalom, Balechei Elyon, Mi Melech, Balechei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni L'Shalom, Balechei Hashalom, Balechei Elyon, Mi Melech, Balechei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem L'Shalom, Balechei Hashalom, Balechei Elyon, Mi Melech, Balechei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we continue going backwards in the Siddur to page 138, where you will find the 16th century poem Lecha Dodi. And like those residents of the town of Tzfat, up in the mountains above the Sea of Galilee, who at that time, years ago, would dress in white robes and go out around the top of the mountain and sing this song to welcome the spirit of Shabbat. We're going to, as we customarily do, sing the first, second, fifth, and ninth stanzas, and we reach the ninth stanza. If you're able to, please join us in rising and facing the door so that we can symbolically welcome the spirit of Shabbat and literally welcome any latecomers at that moment, which inevitably happens. So, Lecha dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad hishme'anu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem u'tiferet v'letchila. Lecha dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lekrat Shabbat l'chuven elcha ki mekor habracha merosh mekedem netzucha sof ma'aseh b'machshavat chila. Lecha dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 5. Hitoreri ki va'orech gumi uri shir daberi kivod Adonai alayich nikla. Lecha dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Boi b'shalom ahateret ba'ala gam b'simcha uv'tzola toch emunei am segula. Boi chala lecha dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi lekrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Please remain standing as we turn to page 144 and continue with the Chatzi Kaddish, the Reader's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah B'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala Uvisman karil v'imru Yehi shmei Rabba mivorach leolam leolmei halmaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitrabam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudisha le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, dahamihiran be'alma, v'maru, amen. Page 146. Let's continue together at the top of 149. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Page 150. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael. Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta, Otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbeinu ufkamenu nasiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negeyomam v'layla negeyomam v'layla ve'ahavatecha al tasir le'olami. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated, and we continue on page 154. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'aderech uv'shofecha uv'kumecha uv'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Together on the top of 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot. That wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai נהדר בקודש נורא תהילות הוסף אלה נורא תהילות הוסף אלה מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים זה לי אנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגואלו מיד חזק ממנו Baruch Ata Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. We continue with the Hashkivenu on page 160 in the middle. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming, life and peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai haporeh sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 162. Ve'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות. ביני ובין בני ישראל, בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. On page 164, we turn to the central portion of our liturgy, a section known alternatively as the Amidah. Amidah means standing. It's a reference to the position of the body while saying it. It's also called the Tefillah, and that's the word right here at the top of the page in Hebrew. Tefillah literally just means prayer. And it's understood that this section of the service is sort of the prayer par excellence in the book. So please rise and join us first in the Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor HaHadorah, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, U'mevii Geula Livnei Bneihem, למען שמו יהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם, עזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב והושיע. משיח הרוח ומוריד הגשם. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. צונח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומיתו מלך, מלך מיני ומחיה, ומצליח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום ילוך הסלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Please be seated. And let's continue at the top of 173 together. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh ha-Shabbat. In 175. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer. Wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands, you are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. In 177. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, ulecha na'eh lehodot. Page 178. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Ki atahu melech adon, lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon, lechol hashalom. Shalom rahav Yisrael amcha, tasim le'olam. Shalom rahav Yisrael amcha, tasim le'olam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol et u'v'chol sha'ah b'shlomecha. Shalom rahav Yisrael amcha, tasim le'olam. Shalom rahav Yisrael amcha, tasim le'olam. Tasim le'olam. Tasim le'olam. Baruch atah Adonai hamvarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. Blessed are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel, and God willing, all people on earth with peace. We continue our prayers silently. Shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. On page 371 of the Siddur, you can find a Mishaberach for healing. In the middle of the page, we think especially this Shabbat of the hostages and wounded who are, God willing, going to be recovered and recovering. Lucy Adams, Sarah bat Vessi v'ben, Rivka Fegi bat Phyllis, Sapira bat Yehudit, Emily Bear, Simcha Meir ben Esther Malka, Nachman ben Balit, Moshe ben Chaya Sarah, Yosef ben Lily Venatan, Yosef Carrasco, E.B. Clark, Katie Peltz Davis, Marcia Fenson, Roz Flegel, Carol Fletcher, Leonore Friedman, Lisa Frolkis, Kai Michellev Gardner, Susie Garrison, Marianne Gehrig, Bonnie Gibson, David Goldenholtz, Lily Gorin, Anna Haas, Mitzi Holman, Jennifer Houston, Michelle Jacoby, Pat Koster, Rory Langlois, Barbara List, Moisha Kaufman, Kathy Cruz, Deborah Lazovic, Marjorie Lowe, Gent Levy, Jim McDermott, Karen McDermott, Kathy Manchero, Donald Metzke, Michael Mikalski, Bob Neubauer, Bob Nikud, Bob Radke, Bill Ross, Martha Ross, and Michael Ross, Jeff Roth, Stella Schneider, Gary Siegel, Herb Seidlin, Bobby Shafton, Gary Sobel, Ricky Spiegel, Will Thompson, Deidre Tischberg, Ted Tausman, Jen Volker, and Leo Weinschel. If there are others of whom you're aware, such as the people on this list, Frina Toby, and members of Emet V'Shalom, who are our sister congregation in Nahariya, Israel, which just had a terrible thing happen to them recently, which was a burning of the place that they held Shabbat services. Clearly not an accident kind of thing, but rather an act of arson. And our hearts go out to them. If there are others of whom you're aware who could use our prayers for healing, I ask you to hold them close to you in your heart as together we sing. Mi sheberach avotenu mikol habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mikor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. There is a section of downtown Philadelphia, close to the river, that houses some of the most important relics and items connected with America's creation. There is the original Pennsylvania State House, now known as Independence Hall, and nearby rests one of America's most recognized symbols, the Liberty Bell. The Speaker of the Pennsylvania Assembly, Isaac Norris, first ordered a bell for the bell tower in 1751 from London's Whitechapel Foundry. That bell cracked on the first test ring. Local metalworkers then melted down that bell and cast a new one right in Philadelphia. It is that bell, the second bell, that would ring to call lawmakers to their meetings and the townspeople together to hear the reading of the news. An early mention of it appears in a letter written by Benjamin Franklin to Catherine Ray in 1755. He wrote, "Adieu, the bell rings, and I must go among the grave ones and talk politics." It is not until the 1830s that the old State House bell would begin to take on significance as a symbol of liberty. The Speaker of the Assembly, Isaac Norris, chose a particular inscription for the State House bell in 1751, perhaps to commemorate the 50th anniversary of William Penn's 1701 Charter of Privileges, which granted religious liberties and political self-government to the people of Pennsylvania. The inscription of liberty on the State House bell went pretty much unnoticed during the Revolutionary War. After the war, however, abolitionists seeking to end slavery were inspired by the bell's message. You may know the bell's message, but if you don't, I'll share it with you now. It comes from the 25th chapter of Leviticus, verse 10, quote, "And you shall proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all the inhabitants thereof." This Liberty Bell was on my mind this past week as I attended a yearly meeting of the Central Conference of American Rabbis, the Association of Reform Rabbis, which this year was in Philadelphia. There were around 450 rabbis from all over North America, Europe, and a more than usual group from Israel. Like any professional gathering, there were opportunities for professional growth, for study, and catching up with old friends and making new ones. I want to share with you a couple of things that, more than a couple, but mention some of the things that I did over this past week, many of which were quite inspiring. It began on Sunday afternoon with a long walk, I think down Market Street, down to a place called the Weitzman Museum of American Jewish History. I think the planners didn't realize that this was also going to be the route of the St. Patrick's Day parade in Philadelphia. So there was some great cross-cultural ferment. We did not see a green bagel, however. We enjoyed a lecture there delivered by a professor from Temple University, Lila Corwin Berman, which was excellent. And it was entitled American Jewish Citizenship in Question, the Meaning of Belonging. Her talk was really the perfect foil for the article I mentioned last week here, The Golden Age of American Jews is Over, which was in the Atlantic magazine, written by Franklin Foer. This particular talk, however, addressed the specific situation of American Jews, the complex relationships of our identities, and the very ideal of liberal nation-state citizenship when we recognize that citizenship is a constructed legal and cultural process, not a sure or stable endpoint. After the long walk back to the hotel, I called a friend to ask him to save me a place at the opening banquet. I took a shower, laid down, and the next thing I knew, it was 10 o'clock. It was a long walk. I took this as a sign of having needed a good nap, and I wasn't too disappointed because the opening dinner is really just a purely social opportunity, and I understand the food was just, okay. Monday morning, there was a wonderful session introducing the process that is beginning now toward creating a new Reform Torah commentary. The last one was done in the mid-1970s under the supervision of Toronto's Rabbi Gunther Plaut. This new edition, beginning to come into focus, is going to be led by Dr. Elsie Stern, a dear friend and absolutely brilliant thinker, writer, and speaker. Elsie was actually a scholar in residence here somewhere between 15 and 20 years ago. And she spoke about the biblical book of Ruth. It was just before Shavuot. Ruth being the first person who ever converted to Judaism more than 3,000 years ago. We were then broken up into small groups and given some sample translations and commentaries that are being assembled for this larger book. And it led to some interesting conversation. In discussing Moses' birth and adoption by Pharaoh's daughter, a commentary was made the point that it was Pharaoh's daughter's societal, quote-unquote, privilege that allowed her to adopt this newborn. After all, I mean, think about it. It was a newborn, male, Hebrew child, which Pharaoh had decreed all the male Hebrew children were going to be killed on the birthing stool. But she happens to find one. Nobody else could have pulled this off. Privilege is not such a terrible word for it, except we discussed at our table the fact that the word privilege has a certain valence right now in American society, something which some might call triggering, another term which has particular valence at this point in time. But we all suspected that the word privilege was not going to be heard that way forever. So we were trying to think, well, the last time this was done was in the 70s. It's probably another 50 years before it's done again. And looking at that longer term, we decided we would recommend, not that they have to listen to us, but we were going to recommend that perhaps the word status might be a little more neutral than the word privilege, although privilege works at this point in time very well. At a small group session on how we can deal with conflict in our communities over issues of the Hamas-Israel war, I sat next to Charlie Citron Walker, who was the rabbi from Colleyville, Texas, who was taken hostage with some congregants several years ago and was able to distract the terrorist by throwing a chair, which allowed the hostages to escape. You may recall that day-long Shabbat where everyone was wondering how things would turn out. He's a very nice young guy. To sit next to him, you would never think, here's a hero in our midst. But he was quick thinking and did very well that day. This session was one of the first that day that dealt with Israel. And in total, all of those sessions might well be described by a comment made to me this morning by a member of our congregation's lay leadership. Quote, "I don't know how I am supposed to feel about this." And that statement, I think you may not realize, but is felt by many rabbis as well as many congregants. I'll get into that more in a second. But this is a very difficult and challenging time for Jews around the world, particularly here and even more particularly in Israel. At lunch, I sat with a small group of American and Israeli Reform rabbis, and we shared personal stories from our situations here and there. It was really difficult and emotional. There were a lot of tears. Every Israeli at the table knew either personally or close to it someone who was killed or kidnapped on October 7th. That evening, we attended a panel of speakers on a similar topic, which began with the words of Rabbi David Saperstein. David is the retired head of the Reform Movement's Religious Action Center in Washington. It's the kind of lobbying arm of the Reform Movement. And I just read somewhere yesterday that it is considered, after AIPAC, one of the most effective, now that the NRA has gone down, it's considered the second most effective lobby on the Hill. And they have been involved in all sorts of fights for civil rights. In fact, the landmark civil rights legislation in 64 and 65 and the Voters' Rights Act were all drafted on a table in the offices of the Religious Action Center. The connection between our movement and those changes is quite strong. David is the retired head of the Religious Action Center. He also served as the first ambassador appointed by Obama to work under Hillary Clinton as the first ambassador to identify and fight religious prejudice around the world. And he's just a marvelous guy. He also has spoken here. You would probably recognize him if I showed you a picture, but most definitively, he is someone who manages to pack a 45-minute talk in 20 minutes by speaking really fast. He's quite incredible. Another speaker was Orly Erez-Lichovsky, who is the director, sort of a parallel institution, the Israeli Reform Movement's Religious Action Center in Israel. The kinds of issues they deal with, some are similar, some are not. She's been there as an attorney for since 2004, directed their legal department between 2014 and 2021, and in that capacity led the legal struggle against discrimination on the basis of religious affiliation, gender segregation in the public sphere, and racial incitement. Her work led to very significant legal achievements, such as abolishing gender segregation on public buses, breaking the Orthodox monopoly regarding the funding of salaries for rabbis, and disqualifying racist candidates from running in the Knesset. Since 2002, she's been the executive director of IRAC, and I mention her in detail now because we were able to arrange on short notice for her to come speak at Sinai on Monday night, March 25th at 7 p.m. And I encourage you to come for an informative session with someone who is really at the heart of the multiple struggles, societal struggles that are taking place in Israel right now. The next morning, I've lost track of the days, I attended an early morning service conducted by Rabbi Sheila Weinberg. Sheila works with the Institute for Jewish Spirituality, and she integrates meditation and movement into prayer. You may recall Sheila having been here years ago as a scholar in residence. I'm planning to incorporate some of what we learned into our Shabbat Vayenefash service here tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Wednesday morning, I went to a session led by a clinical psychologist, Betsy Stone, that addressed the key influences and characteristics of generational cohorts, such as the boomers, Generation X, millennials, and so forth. Understanding and respecting these differences turns out to be very helpful when working and interacting with those from different age cohorts, because there's some real general observations one can make and general strategies that are attendant to each of those. One example, how should a boomer react when dealing with an employee who is a millennial and by definition may have dramatically different ideas about their role in the organization and how to achieve the all-important work-life balance, something that Generation X started talking about but never really did anything about, but the millennials sort of took to heart and took it forward. Or another issue that came up, how ought a congregational rabbi strategize working with millennials, many of whom would describe themselves as spiritual but not religious? We then discussed that presentation in small groups composed of rabbis from every one of the above-mentioned cohorts, and it was really fascinating. It was a kind of a glimpse into the mechanism of how these things work generationally, and in a synagogue, why it's important to be aware of that and to work towards harmony with it rather than blundering around making mistakes. That afternoon, I had signed up for a session taught in Hebrew, which I always like to do while I'm there. And this was a session regarding the gender-fluid nature of Purim and the Scroll of Esther. I was sort of like reading through the catalog of what was coming. I was like, now you have my attention. This was really fascinating. It's worthy of an entire sermon, but suffice to say that the ancient rabbis again surprise us by their creativity and open-mindedness. Some of you may recall a number of years ago, I wrote a letter to the congregation explaining how the rabbis of the Talmud had a rather sophisticated and open-minded view of sexual identity and gender identity. They had six different categories. And this was based not on genetics. They didn't know from genetics, but they did know what they could observe of the physical form and of people's behavior. And they understood that, not everybody comes out the same. They didn't know yet that people could have actually different DNA in their bodies. You can have DNA in your cells, in your gut, in your brain. It's a magnificently interesting and complicated field. And though they couldn't examine it on that level, they did understand some things quite intuitively. Where am I? So Purim, it turns out, for many centuries has served in Jewish culture as an opportunity to explore sexuality and gender roles. I remember, this is not what I wrote, so I'll deny it if you say I've said it. But when Julie and I met, she was living on a kibbutz outside of Jerusalem. And Purim was an opportunity for everyone to have a lot to drink. That part is not so unusual. The unusual part was going home with somebody else's partner, which, you hear stories about the 60s, but this was really, I remember talking to Julie after that night. She said, yeah, I was being hit on from all sides. That's, all of the constraints come off. It's sort of like the Jewish Mardi Gras, in a sense. Purim before we get to Passover, which is serious and more strict. It's also, if you are in an ultra-Orthodox community, for example, you will see men cross-dressing with impunity. Something that is, sort of directly countermanded in the Torah. But on Purim, it's okay, and it's kind of a safety valve in a way, and it's a way for people to experiment without a lot at risk. It was quite a topic, and I was very amused that this was a topic being offered, given that the theme of our adult Purim spiel this month is the story of Purim told through the music and characters of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which, if you've ever experienced it, deals very directly with those issues. And the cantor and I have been talking the last few months, like, God, how can we make this appropriate? I mean, you're supposed to kind of be outrageous, but it also is taking place in the sanctuary. So how are we going to do this? And I sent him a message with a picture of the session as it was entitled in the pamphlet. And I said, I think we have permission now. One last note worthy of mention. When I arrived at Philadelphia, I tried to make a reservation at a restaurant called Zahav, which is probably thought of now as the best or one of the best Israeli restaurants outside of Israel. Created years ago by Michael Solomonov, who is an American Israeli who started that restaurant 20 some odd years ago and now has like 8 or 9 of them in the Philadelphia area, no two of which are alike. They have different focuses for their cuisine. And when I started looking into it, I had to laugh because evidently to actually get a reservation, you have to call the day 5 months ahead of when you want to actually dine. That's when they open up reservations for 5 months later. And if you don't make it in the first 5 or 10 minutes, forget it. It's over. So I made a note of that for the next time I'm in Philadelphia. I was, however, able to go to one of his other establishment, of which there's several, called Goldie's. And the name has nothing to do with the focus. It's completely about falafel. Really, the only thing they serve other than falafel, they make these tahina shakes, which are, I have no words, delicious. Delicious, delicious. It was so good I went back 2 days later to have lunch. And I was sitting there thinking, the last 5 times I've been in Israel, I haven't had falafel. It just didn't, I had it a lot as a kid, and as it turns out, I had to go to Philadelphia. But it was really, really good. All in all, this conference spent a lot of time focusing on Israel, which, given what's going on, is incredibly important, not only for Israelis, but also for American Jews. The nature of the trauma that many of us experienced after October 7th, it may be different in amplitude compared to what's going on in Israel. But it's still rather dislocating. I've talked to a lot of people over the last months who felt their understanding of their place as an American Jew to be shaken a bit by what happened on the other side of the world, which is not exactly logical, but it is quite understandable. All I can tell you now is that this Sunday is the Purim Carnival. If you have younger children, or if you just like an opportunity to play games of chance and to eat hot dogs and pizza, that is for you. And next Saturday night, the 23rd, I think it is when the Rocky Horror, or the Shushan Horror Picture Show, I think it's called, will be taking place in this room. So Shabbat Shalom and an early Chag Sameach. We're going to conclude the service first with the Aleinu, which you can find on page 586, and then the Kaddish afterwards. So please rise. The Mourner's Kaddish is on page 598. We think especially this week of David Sasson, Denise Yakimov, Jonathan Frank, Hank Borkovitz, and Israeli soldiers Itai Chen and Amishar Ben David, and Michael Gal, all of whom died this past week. We think as well of all of the truly innocent people on both sides of that battle who have died. We think of members of our congregation who have people saying Kaddish for them, and this is the year following the death. Stan Aronoff, Dick Kuhn, Yehuda Yanai, Bill Fox, Marcia Reese, Maxine Cohn, Dr. Yosef Bear Marcus, Ron Sinclair, Margot Hirsch, Jim Stillman, James Karlowitz, John Labatsky, Kermit Bott, Ruth Lowenstein, Foster Padway, Geraldine Schmidman, Jack Zevell, Jacqueline Wagner, Doris Gendelman, Harriet Hackman, Mary Ann Greenebaum, Bob Sanderson, Shirley Schlomovitz, Ron Abel, Len Loesser, Dick Strauss, Jim Ansfield, Natalie Winowich, Carol Ann Willems, and Tom Yanni. And the following whose yahrzeit falls this week: Sylvia Berkowitz, Lauren Spodner, Pearl Brown, George Copeland, Leon Glassman, Dr. Ronald Buzzy Grossman, Judith Heldman, Leona Virginia Hill, Helen Koppel, Rose Pearlstein Pincus, Victor Robb, Saul Oscar Redman, Harold Reif, Bertie Schneider, Doji Sherman, Jerry Siegel, Arthur Tiber, Roman Wagner, Morris Wiviot, and Nate Ziskin. And if there is anyone here who is mourning the recent passing of a friend or loved one, or observing the anniversary, the yahrzeit of a loved one's death whose name I didn't mention, I would ask you please to share those names aloud at this time. On page 598, please join, if you choose. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah bi'alma divrach chirutei v'imlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru Yehei shmei rabbah mivorach ulei Yitgadal v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shemei dikutsha le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran ba'alma v'imru Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu Yisrael v'imru oseh shalom b'mromav Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. May the source of peace send peace to all horror and mourning, and may God enable each one of us to figure out a way to work towards a just peace in our world, in our communities, in our families, etc. Please have a seat. And Scott, are you up?
Thank you, Rabbi. And for the second time, welcome back. We have missed you. We're grateful for the contributions made this week to our Sinai community in memory of Dr. Ronald Grossman, Helen Koppel, and Roman F. Wagner. Please join us for the following upcoming programs. Your Mishloach Manot Purim gifts will be available for pickup curbside at Sinai on this Sunday between 10 and noon. Please pick them up. Don't miss the family Purim celebration Spiel and Carnival on this Sunday from 9:30 to noon. The social justice meeting is Monday, March 18th at 5:15 p.m. The Women of Sinai Book Club meets Thursday, March 21 at 7 p.m. Purim at Sinai Saturday, March 23rd at Sinai, pizza and beer dinner at 6 p.m., and adults only Megillah reading and spiel at 7 p.m. Please RSVP for dinner. Women of Sinai Appreciation Lunch is Sunday, April 7th at noon here at Sinai. Allie Hayden, Assistant Director of Hillel, Milwaukee, will discuss embracing Judaism and the challenge of anti-Semitism on campus and in the field. Please RSVP to Bobby Rector. She's here tonight. Second night Passover Seder at Sinai, Tuesday, April 23rd, 5:30 to 8:30. Please RSVP by Tuesday, April 16th. Please also refer to the Tuesday and Friday Sinai e-News for the latest programming and Zoom links. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi. Well done. The blessing over Shabbat lights is on page 120, and it looks like we're pretty much right on time. And if you please rise, everyone. Oh, yeah, sure. That is fine. Why don't you light first?
How does it start?
It goes like this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. On page 123 is the Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lemaaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim kivanu v'charta v'yotanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha b'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. And last but not least, we're so good here that we actually have 2 Torah covers. Please join me in blessing the Motzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon. Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and we'll see you inside.